Hello and welcome to our Scissorhands UK training video. My name is Ashley Howard. I am the owner and creator of Scissorhands UK, and this is Charlotte Boyle. She is the head of our artistic team, and we're going to be showing you one of our signature haircuts on Chelsea's hair today. This is our short layer haircut, and for this we're going to be using our 30 gap soft cut, and primarily we're going to be using our 15 gap Evo scissor pretty much for the entire haircut, which already you can tell is quite a break from what you might normally do, but I do promise you this is a very easy way to go about a haircut, and we'll go through it step by step. So we'll start getting on with Chelsea's haircut now. So for the first part of this cut, what I'm going to be doing is I'm going to be using the 30 gap soft cut scissor. That's this one here. And all I'm going to do, because we want to take Chelsea's hair shorter into the nape area, I'm going to show you a quick easy way. I'm going to do just one side for now of how we use this scissor to create very quickly a kind of soft into the nape section of hair. We're using our normal scissor over comb technique, and I start quite far into the hair, and you will see as you use the scissor that very quickly you can start to create a very soft texture through the hair. But each time that you cut, because unlike a normal scissor you don't create any sharp marks in the first place, it's very easy to take the hair in to the nape. And I think when you do it like this, it's a much softer way than if you were to use a traditional scissor, which, as I said, would put marks into the hair, which often as a stylist you will have to then try and take out later.
Why would you choose to use your soft cut over your Evo, or Evo over your soft cut?
Okay, well for this technique I'm using the soft cut because this actually takes away more hair than the Evo. Now a lot of people think that this cuts more away. It actually doesn't. And the reason is, if you look, there's more blade in this scissor than there is in this one. And what happens is, when you can use this, but it will take you a little bit longer. And sometimes when I'm working in a busy salon day to day, I want to be able to get that result in the time that I've got. Yeah. So I use the soft cut. I can take quite a bit of hair away, but at the same time, as you can see, we automatically get a very soft finish to our cut. So I'm just finishing off cutting that quite short into the nape, and as you can see, it's quite quick. It's very easy, and because I know I'm not going to get those cut marks in the hair, it's going to be a very easy section to work with and then to blend the rest of the haircut into. So now we've done the underneath section with the soft cut to take that really gently into the nape area for Chelsea. What I'm now going to do is I'm going to switch to using the Evo blade. I'm going to use a scissor over comb technique, and that's going to help us get a really gentle blend in from the shorter section into these longer layers. And then once we've done that, we're then going to move into cutting with our fingers to cut the rest of the layers through the short layer cut. So I'm going to start now, simply scissor over comb technique. And you see I'm working the scissor quite into the hair, and very quickly we start to blend from that very short into those slightly longer layers.
Would you always do this wet?
Well, you know, you can do this wet or dry, and on different hair types you'll find that certain hair types cut a little bit more. As long as you're aware of the hair type that you're working on, then it doesn't really matter. Again, you know, some stylists really like to work on wet hair and some on dry. I really don't mind. And you see how quickly that's now merged in with that shorter bottom section. We just carry on into the middle. Exactly the same, and as you do the section, comb the hair back down, lift the hair up again, working into the hair. And I'm just going to move Chelsea around a little bit here. You can see a little bit closer. Start underneath here, and look, as I cut, I'm quite far into the section. I continue up, normal scissor over comb technique, and when you want to check how it looks, just comb the hair back down. You know that it's going to merge together really gently, and just choose as to whether you need to take any more hair off, which I do in this case. And what you get is a really soft merging together of those two sections. I'm going to move around just to finish off that back section. Comb the hair down, exactly the same thing again. And by doing this, we can now start with this higher part of the haircut to start working with our fingers, again with the Evo blade, to carry on and create our short layered haircut as we go. So there we go. I'm going to hand over to Charlotte now, and she's going to carry on with the layering. Is that okay with you?
Absolutely.
Fantastic.
So I'm going to take my hair straight out from the head. I'm just going to leave this very front section because I want some softness on the face. And again, I'm going to go in quite deep with my blade, and we're going to go put texture in, layers, and take off length all in one go.
We take it for granted that we know that by cutting the hair from the inside, we're going to get that result. But for a lot of stylists, that's a real step out of their comfort zone.
Yeah, absolutely.
But when you think back, and I used to do 2 haircuts per client. I'd do the whole kind of external shape with a solid blade, then I'd dry the hair and I'd have to go back in again.
Yeah, and I found myself sort of drying it really quickly because it looked really bulky, and I just wanted to get in and do all the texturising.
Absolutely.
It's so nice to do it all in one go.
Yeah. And now ultimately, it does save you a little bit of time as well.
Saves you a lot of time.
Yeah. I mean, our focus is always on the result. The quality of the haircut has to be as good, stroke better than it used to be. But it's a bonus when you can do these 3 things, volume, layers and length, all in one go. And like you said earlier, it's important to be consistent where you always take the hair out from the head at 90 degrees and you find you can see everything in the haircut that way.
Yeah.
And already, as you're doing that, you can see that you've got 2 or 3 options on the way that you might be able to style that hair.
Yeah, it was so easy for your clients to style.
Yeah.
So easy.
Yeah. And again, I used to find that I would cut it with a solid blade, and not only was it kind of heavier and bulkier, but actually when I dried the hair, I could see where the scissors had been in the hair, because you've got those, you've got those solid lines in the haircut.
Absolutely.
So this way, because you don't create the problem in the first place.
Yeah, sort of history of our hairdressing is that we spend ages putting these precision, perfect lines in the hair, and then ages shattering them all.
Yeah, yeah, and that's also really important because we talk about we talk about the balance of weight in the hair. As long as the hairdresser is really conscious of that as they're working, then that will be absolutely fine. Because I have spoke to some stylists who think, oh, I've got to be careful, I might take too much hair out. Well, that's not the case. If anything, as you were saying earlier, this is quite a forgiving way to cut hair. It's actually really, really gentle.
Yeah.
So, how many clients, if they come into the salon, how many clients would you use an Evo blade and a soft cut on out of 10?
I'd probably use my Evo on all 10.
I probably would, yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
In some way or form, not necessarily the whole haircut, but yeah.
Yeah. If you were to take a puff, if you asked clients, how many clients would like to have a nice kind of bouncy volume to their hair? How many people want it to be easy to blow dry? That's going to be 9 out of 10. Yeah. And that's where...
Nobody says I'd really like some really difficult hair
to
deal with myself at home.
Exactly. But, we know that because if you've done it traditionally and bluntly, that is probably the hardest way you could have gone about cutting the hair. That's great. You can see the shape starting to form really, really well.
Okay, so I just want to blend in those front bits that I left just a little bit longer.
So you're just pulling that front section back into the side section.
I'm just over-directing it slightly. I just left it out to be aware that I didn't want to just take too much away, so I'm a bit more in control of it.
Yeah. Same as any haircut. When you're looking at that whole front section, it's always the finest hair, the thinnest hair. So exactly the same principles apply.
And again, round the other side.
again, this would be something that in the past I would have had to pick the hair up separately with something like this, a solid blade, and I'd have been chipping and pointing and slicing to try and do, whereas
actually, you know, there's as much as you could pick it up in tiny little sections, there's some bits you just couldn't get in the same way that you could do with the scissors.
yeah. And when you're working, I know you said about the section on the top. Would you always work from this central point out each time?
Yeah, always.
Yeah.
So always working with your scissor. You imagine it sort of pivoting
Pivot
on the
round.
crown.
Yeah. Yeah, we find that, and it's something that we introduce to all our clients, because what it does is it encourages two things. One is quite a round shape, particularly on ladies' hair cutting. And also it helps to encourage the most volume in the hair as well. But having said that, how many times have I seen a stylist that's gone for a classic guideline on the crown, and then they've worked forward or back in an absolutely square, flat, square layer, and you see it so many times, whereas if you work from this central point, you can't help but make a softer shape, and you generally leave a little bit more around the outside when you're finished.
Okay, so we've just sectioned through this top bit now, and we're going to go in again using our Evo blade. We want it to be really nice and choppy through this top section. So we're going to start quite deep into the section and take a little bit of length off as we add the texture.
That's going to give fantastic volume in a hair.
That's going to be great.
And could you just recap for people watching about how you then take the length off at the end and the difference between adding that volume and texture and then taking the length off?
So the way I sort of think about it is when you're taking volume sections, you're going in and you're moving your fingers fast and your scissors slow, and then as you get to the end, you move your fingers slow
and your scissors
and
fast.
scissors fast.
The other way around. That's brilliant. Yeah, that's a great way to explain it. But we already know that without a huge amount of product, that's already going to be able to have lots of texture, and lift.
And then we're just repeating that.
Yeah. And also, if somebody's having more of what I would perhaps call a traditional short layer, these principles you would use in the same way.
Yeah.
But perhaps a little more subtle, because you don't want to get extra texture.
Yeah.
Or too much texture.
It depends on the hair type as well.
Mm-hmm.
Because Chelsea's got quite fine hair and it can sit quite flat, so we want really to get as much lift in at the roots as possible and as much texture in there as possible, because it's just going to work with her hair type.
Mm-hmm.
If somebody had quite springy hair, you wouldn't go in so deep because it would be unmanageable.
Yeah, you know, the amount of times I get asked by people as well, what about when I'm working on people with naturally curly hair, what's the difference? Or can I use an Evo blade on curly hair? What do you normally say to people?
Yeah, definitely. I think it works really well on curly hair.
Yeah. Yeah, me too. I love cutting curls. The difference being, people with curly hair don't necessarily need as much volume, but because, as we said earlier, you can balance the amount of weight in there, it really works because the curls can kind of flow in the hair. Yeah. Again, very different from that traditional solid cut. The volume, layers, and there's the length. You can see the overall shape. The difference is it isn't a completely solid, blunt shape.
Yeah.
It's got a much softer edge to it. So you're working in exactly the same
so
pattern.
I'm just picking up from where we started, but working around the opposite side of the head.
Mm-hmm. And is this something that you would use on a short layered haircut for a man?
Yeah, men especially. And it's great actually because when they want it really short but with texture in, it's so hard to try and point cut the texture into such a short haircut.
Yeah. I find that my barbering clients or male grooming salons absolutely love cutting it this way for a couple of reasons. If they want to keep length in a gent's hair, particularly if they've got a quiff or a pomp or something with volume, they've already got that extra lift in there.
Yeah, it's scaffolding.
Like, yeah. And the other one is, if they're cropping the hair very, very short, when they cut it this way, because it's so soft, the hair will sit nice and flat if they want, or like you said, if you put a bit of product in the hair, you can see the texture if you want to.
Yeah, get that definition.
Yeah. Again, even though the hair's wet, you can see where that lovely full shape is really starting to appear now in the hair. What would you say about having done this haircut for the first time, when a client comes back in 6 weeks, what are you looking for? What's different to this kind of cut from a traditional haircut?
So what would you do in a second haircut?
Yeah, when it's six weeks time.
So you have to do even less when somebody comes back to get the haircut, because what we will have is the bit that we've cut, but it'll have grown out a little bit.
Yeah.
So all we really need to do is sort of cut in a little bit deeper and then take a bit of length off the ends.
Do you know something that I try and describe it to people that they seem to understand really well, is treat this kind of cutting technique almost like a colour, where you just top it up each time.
Yeah, that's a really good way of looking at it.
Because what you're doing is you're doing that volume cut first, and because the middle's kind of already done from the last haircut, all you need to do is that first volume cut and then go straight out to the overall length and recut that, and it's done.
Yeah, so easy.
Yeah. And that's the same for the bob, same for the halo cut, as well as this.
Yeah, what you don't want to do is go in and do the exact same thing, because you're going to take too much hair away.
And again, that comes back to the stylist being aware, as they're cutting each section, to think, right, how much hair have I got? How much weight do I need to balance? And as long as they're paying attention to that, which of course they all are, that's absolutely fine. But again, that's a break from a traditional thought, because if you're cutting traditional techniques, you start from scratch every time.
Yeah.
And it's something really worth practicing, especially the first time you start using these types of scissors. So it's really good to see how each time you're starting halfway into the section and you work your way out to the length. So you're doing the volume, the layering and the length all in one go.
Yeah. You can just, it feels so nice to do it like that, doesn't it?
Yeah, it does. Something people say to me, this is more of a client thing as well, is they like the way the hair behaves, how it feels when it's done. And a good gauge sometimes is, like you were saying earlier about how long the haircut lasts, they'll tell you when it starts to feel a little bit flat again.
Yeah.
And they know it needs to be topped up. That's great. And you can see, but just by this demonstration, it doesn't take long at all.
No, so what I would have done before this, I would have gone round, cut it all precisely, squared it, and then gone through and spent ages texturising it.
Yeah. And it is amazing how many times you still see that happen in salons, where people kind of almost default back to doing it that way, and then wonder when they look in the mirror why they've got these marks in the hair they have to then try and get out from the original haircut.
So we've dried Chelsea off. You can see how much texture she's got now through the top of the hair, because we've done that all with the Eva cut. Obviously we've left this fringe out, we just want to keep a bit of length, but we need to blend it in and make it part of the haircut. So we're just going to take that across the head, again coming round and working downhill with the scissor again, just to blend that fringe in. We want to take a little bit of length off it as well.
It's a bit quicker for that length, yeah. And yeah, and again, you know, when you're doing this sort of technique, explaining to a stylist that you need to start far enough into the section to give you enough space
to work out
to that length.
Absolutely.
I think that's really vital. Yes, you're about halfway in again, aren't you?
Yeah.
Working out to the length. Lovely.
And then when we put this back over.
And you can see straight away how you've got that beautiful blended effect, like automatically.
Yeah.
That is so cool, because if you try and do that with a solid blade and those kind of slicing techniques, I find that incredibly difficult and quite time consuming, whereas you've just done that in, what, 3 sections?
Yeah, normally what you'd have to do is put a really solid line in and then spend ages trying to take it out again.
Exactly.
So, and then just to finish this off, just so that it blends the fringe from that bit of the haircut, I'm just gonna stick it the other way.
Ah, but still in that circular pivot.
Still working away from the crown. And just
that corner.
take that corner off there.
Lovely.
That looks great. So then you can see there, that's now blending into the hair from the side of the head.
Yeah. And interestingly, when you're doing that kind of technique, is that the same thing you do on a bob?
If I was doing the fringe?
Yeah.
Yeah, exactly the same. Yeah.
Because that's what I do. And on long hair as well, where you want to get that fringe to really sweep across. And sometimes if you're dealing with hair that's really short into long, you can get more of a swept effect than by doing it, say, a traditional way. So
yeah, and a softer slope than just doing a hard edge to it, because you're using the sort of weight reduction as part of your slope.
Yeah, absolutely. That looks lovely. So perhaps time to get some product in there and do the finishing touches. Yeah. Okay. Now we've got the short layered haircut all finished and it's all dried. You can see it's quite a transformation for Chelsea. But just to show you some variation, as her hair is now, this could be quite a nice, almost formal workwear type look that she might have as a day-to-day look for a haircut. But I'm going to hand you over to Charlotte now, who's going to put through a little bit of styling product to show you a quick alternative way how you can really bring this to life with a bit of product. So
yeah, so I've just got a really dry sort of moulding paste. I'm just going to go all the way through the hair and work through that texture that we've added to the top of the hair.
yeah, you can really see that now. As soon as you put the product in, it really does come to life. So this would be something more of a Saturday night social event kind of look.
Every day, I think.
Every day, yeah, well, that's exactly. But the client's got the option, haven't they?
That's it.
So this is a little training aid that we use at Scissorhands, and all I've done is I've created a 3-dimensional snapshot of exactly the type of haircut that we've done on Chelsea today. And you can see the principle of when you use the Evo blade, again, where you have the green mark is where we cut the volume, where we have the yellow is the internal layers, and the white area is the overall length. And this can be adapted, whether it's a very, very short layered haircut or even a longer one. The principle is exactly the same. You'll notice that you always work from a central point. You'll notice that you have the nape, the middle, and the top section. All the sections are pulled again at 90 degrees from the head, almost like that electric shock effect that we said. And also you'll see from the arrows that your scissors are always meant to travel in a downward direction when you're cutting. Okay, so now we've finished, you've put the product in. It's fantastic, all the texture and movement, still really like soft and feminine, and you've got some real versatility in that whole look. So what do you think of the finished look, Chelsea?
I love it.
Oh, that's great. Super. And again, we want people to understand how simple these kind of looks can be. When you use really simple sectioning technique, the right choice of scissor and blade to use, you can create these looks very easily in your salon at whatever stage you're at.